So, you figured out your goals and your strategies. You kind of, and maybe you've worked with us and we've helped you figure that out. Sadie, I think we need to talk about not the fact that they know that they need a website. Like, you need one. Like, walk away from this whole season knowing, like, this is a known. It's not a question if you should have a website. Like, you need one. That's just a given. But now we want to pivot on, like, what is it that you need to bring the website to life? So there are things that make the website process go smoothly. And with Sandy and I want to help you with that.
Yes, and I'm going to tell you, this is going to help you and the person, no matter who you go to. These same elements are key to getting it done well.
And fast. Hey, I'm Stephanie Feger, and Empower is my middle name. Well, okay, not really, but y'all, it really should be. I believe that empowered people empower people, and I am obsessed with empowering you, the nonfiction author, with impactful marketing strategies to help you take your important message and share it with those who desperately need it, want it, and will buy it. As the owner and chief strategist of the Empower PR Group and the author of 2 books myself, I have merged my love for reading books, writing books, and marketing books to help nonfiction authors with laser-focused strategies and tactics to write books that sell, promote books to those who need and want them most, and build meaningful businesses from empowering messages. I want you to think of this podcast as your one-stop shop for marketing insights from an author who has been there, done that, and understands exactly where you are. So grab a warm beverage. Y'all know this about me. I have a chai tea sitting here, and get a comfy blanket and get ready with your pens because I am ready to empower you on author websites. This is the Empowered Author Podcast. So we live in a digital age where businesses, including those built by authors, require a digital presence. Potential readers want to learn more about you, your books, your business, and one of the first places they go, if they don't go here first, is online to find your website. But what should be on your website, and what's the purpose of it anyway? How can your website work for you instead of the other way around? There are so many questions for us to answer on this season of the Empowered Author Podcast, but I'm ready to do so because this season we unpack the what's, the whys, the hows, and more of author websites. Come on, y'all, let's go dive in. All right, Sandy, another episode to talk all things website, and seriously, I can't think of anybody that it's more fun to talk about websites with than you. So last episode, Sandy, we talked about really how a website can validate and increase an author brand's credibility. And I was wondering how many people listening actually went and Googled the 2 of us. And they probably were like, who is that person? What do their author websites or business websites look like? And do they stick true with what they talk about?
And I was thinking that as I rebuild my website, my old one is, it's good, but it's not perfect. In my mind, yes. So
it'll never be perfect. And that's okay. So you all listening, the people who do this for a living are always thinking this too. Like, we're like, oh, well, it's not perfect. And that's okay. As long as it's good, it's branded, it's interconnected, and has the right pieces. And actually, that is what we're talking about today. And it all starts with strategy. Like, that's where you and I love to start. But as you start to really build what your website should look like, you want to start with understanding why in the world you want your website, and you need to be asking yourself some of these things. So in today's episode, we're going to almost kind of reverse engineer this conversation. We're going to dig in deep to what we think and what we've experienced with the authors we worked with on what are the key pieces that every author website should have. And these are things you need to be thinking about, not just as you prepare for getting your website in place, but if you also already have a website, you might want to think about it as, you evaluate, kind of do your own website audit. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty and all that stuff, but we have to start at the strategy, Sandy. My favorite place. Always, always. So anybody that comes to me and says, hey, I want to build a website, like, I always ask them first and foremost, like, why? why? I know why I want you to build a website, but why do you want to build a website? And let's be honest, many of them don't come to me saying, I want a website. Most people come to me for other things, and I'm usually the one saying, I think we need a website. But, I think you need to ask yourself, why are you wanting to build a website? Like, you wrote a book, but like, what do you want the website to do for you? Right? You wrote a book. The reality is you probably want to sell it. You'd like to make some money off of it. You'd like to share the messages. You probably would want to make sure that the offerings are in place. And when I talk about derivative offerings, some people might not know what I mean by that. Sandy, some of the websites and authors we've worked with, what are some derivative offerings that you've seen authors do?
We've built websites for a whole realm of different businesses, and some are coaching, some are speaking, some have other workbooks, or they do any kind of book work group. We were just talking about workshops and webinars, and there are a lot of services that you can take off of your book, or you already have a business and your book is to support that business.
Well, and I have a client as well that I work with right now, and he wrote a book, but his book is built upon a message, and that message has created its own brand, and now he sells apparel and product. And so it's very interconnected there. So that is when we talk about derivative offerings, we're talking about things that have stemmed from the book's message or the book itself. So ask yourself, like, what are those offerings? And I think another question you need to ask yourself is, why did you write the book in the first place? That might come before why do you want a website? Like, if you ask yourself, why did you write the book? That's important.
Yeah, I think because some people write the book and a business comes later, and some people write a book to support a business or to enhance their message.
I like both sides. Like, I'm the product of writing a book and a business comes from it, but I really get excited about other people who have a business and realize that a book can be a way to elevate themselves as a thought leader or elevate their business. So it gets really exciting, but both of those are important for us to know about before you build your website. Another question to think about is, what is it about your message that people will be inspired by? That's important. I keep thinking of an amazing author that you and I had the chance to work on building his website, Mike Barger. And gosh, this is a great website for you all to go to, mikebarger.com. Sandy and I love aesthetically, it's beautiful, but it really works for Mike. But what I found really cool about, like, what do you want people to be inspired by? His book is about crisis management, and in the process of his website design, we realized that really the crux of what differentiates him is not just about how to be prepared for a crisis, but how to speak to your stakeholders. So we built the website around that. Like, that's what people are going to be inspired by, is his stakeholder analysis and his view on stakeholders in general. So this is important things to think about. Like, you want to make sure that your website is a unique experience, because you bring that experience and that skill set to the world and to the people that you work with. Like, your goal is to make their lives better. We want to work with the people who want to change the world in the positive. And then the last question I usually kind of ask people when they're thinking about strategies is, what is the problem that your message is solving? So when you think about why you wrote the book, it's likely because there was a problem out there and you had a solution. And I know that sounds so rudimentary, but I think it's really important on how you build your website, because your website needs to be written and outlined in a way that acknowledges kind of the pain points and the problems that those who are visiting it, where they go there, you see them shaking their head like, yeah, yep, like, I'm feeling that. And your book, your message, your derivative offerings are solutions to those.
Yeah, you absolutely want people to say, they get me. They completely understand. And they've written a book to help me solve this problem, get through this situation, whatever, grow as a leader, whatever that thing is that you're trying to do.
So we're talking to authors, and so I know that they'll get this when I say, like, you want your cover to do the same thing for you. And I have a couple of books in my Amazon checkout right now. And there's one in particular, it's called The Lazy Genius Way. I don't think I've told you about this, Sandy. It's the podcast, The Lazy Genius, is just phenomenal. But this book, The Lazy Genius Way, All I had to do was look at the cover and I'm like, oh, done. Like, I like the cover. I know I'm going to like the book. Same thing with, when you think about, your website, you want people to end up coming and going, oh, well, done. I'm at the right place. Like this person gets it. They get me and I feel good about this.
Yeah. And that comes down to how it's built and the brand.
It does. Oh, the brand. Okay, we'll get there in a minute because that's so important. Um, I think another thing I want you to think about is author out there, not Sandy, but you can always think about this, Sandy, but the authors out there too. I want you to think about, are you wanting to build a website just because everybody else is, or because it's the thing to do, or because you have a plan of action and a goal around it? And so if you were to come to us and say, I need a website because everybody else has one, we would push you to say, yes, you're correct, but let's create a plan of action and have a goal. So like, is it because you want to sell books on it or direct people to another platform to do so? Like Sandy, that would require different designs, different layouts and formats. If you want to sell books on there on your website directly, then that requires an e-commerce element. If not, you can do, a direct, or maybe you need a, what do we call it? Like a friendly URL that takes them to the Amazon link or whatever, right? Like that impacts design. I think another question you and I talked about I thought was interesting is, do you want to drive people to the website organically or through promotional direction? And that's important too. If it's organically, which most of us want organically, then you want to make sure you have a strong SEO and keywords are all up in there. If it's an and you want to do it with promotional efforts, like you probably need some landing pages. You probably need some opt-ins. Like these are things that you're probably not thinking of right now, author friend listening, but they're really important. Wouldn't you say, Sandy?
I would say they're I mean, opt-ins, I think regardless of which way you're going, yeah, you need some kind of opt-in because you need to have a way to talk to people even when they're not on your website.
Mm-hmm. Well, and for those who are listening going, opt-in is a language that I have no idea what it is. What an opt-in and a lead magnet and email nurtures and all that stuff really means is your website kind of becomes a conduit to help you build an email list. That email list allows you to create a relationship and conversation with with these people who have quote unquote opted into it. And usually people don't opt in unless they get something. Most people don't go, I just love Stephanie, I'm going to opt into her website. They want a reason to opt in. We don't give up our prime email real estate very freely anymore. As I just deleted 50 emails today of junk emails. Like I have less tolerance of doing that. So an opt-in on your website has some really, really targeted content or something that these people are going to want, and they're trading their email to get it.
Yeah, and that's, it's one of those pieces that it could be a primary piece. It could be a secondary piece. It really depends on your goals.
It does. And that goes back to the strategy. You and I were just talking about doing some adjustments on my website for the opt-in because it's going to be a primary piece for me on some things. So yeah, I mean, all of that's important. I also think you want to think about what you want your website to do for you. Do you want it to be a brochure site? And what we mean by that is I kind of think of rack cards. So early in my world of communications and marketing, Sandy, I worked for a museum, and I was responsible for creating rack cards. And those are those like one little page brochures that you put in different like tourism places for individuals to pick up and learn more about you. But it's real like one-sided. It's the same concept, right?
It is. I mean, a brochure site is a brochure. It is not going to probably have a blog and a lot of writing, and it's not going to be a constant evolution, but it is a place for people to stop and say, oh, they are professional. Oh, hey, they are, look, they wrote this book.
And that might be all you need. We won't know till we get into your goals. Maybe you want to use it as like a engagement platform, right? So maybe you realize, and this is actually probably the place that you and I spend a lot of time on with our authors. Engagement usually has like a blog or a video or something that's kind of dynamic that allows for more conversation. And that type of a website drives people to it more regularly.
Yeah, I think, that is definitely probably more common in a lot of ways, because especially authors, writing is key to who they are. So, yeah, blog, doing videos, that kind of thing. It's just what they do.
They get excited about it.
Yes.
The other one, it would be an e-commerce site. So like I talked about with one of my clients that has t-shirts and mugs and stuff like that. Or if you want to be selling your books or journals or workbooks or whatever, that has an e-commerce section. So you want to figure out like what do you want what's your goal for your website, because how someone designs it they will take all of that into account. All right. So, Sandy, I want to pivot for a quick minute though and ask ourselves this. Like we just had this goal conversation around what our strategy is, but we want to ask ourselves, like, what does the reader, your potential client, your target audience, what do they need? Like, what are they looking for? Why would they come to your website? What are their needs? I think that's really important too, don't you?
It really is probably more important.
Yeah.
Because if you're speaking to the wrong people, offering the wrong things to the wrong people, you're not going to make progress. You have to know what you're trying to do and what value you provide, and then who you provide it to, because that's the person that you need to really talk to.
Yes, and I have to also add, if you are a professional development lover, you need to put in your Amazon cart right now. They Ask You Answer. It's probably the best book I've read for business ever. And they have a whole section on website. But even before you get to the website, it talks about thinking about your target audience and how do you drive them through what's called inbound marketing. And that is through your content strategy. And it's phenomenal, but like, let me sum it up in like a minute or two. I want you to be thinking about your target audience and like, don't even think about you. Think about what your message is about, what your book's about, and the types of questions that your target audience is going to be asking themselves. So if you're writing about, I don't know, goodness gracious, a self-help book, they might never think, oh, well, I think I need to find this particular book and this particular type of self-help tool. Instead, they might be thinking about questions that could direct to you, that you could use your blog or your website to directly address. When you're focusing on your target audience, that helps with search engine optimization. That helps with people finding you in your rankings. And then you can actually use that as ways to like authentically answer questions that people might ask you and you don't have time for. You can like qualify them before they ever get to you. It's brilliant, brilliant. Go buy the book today. And no, I wasn't paid to tell you that.
It is a great book.
Hey, Stephanie here, and I wanted to pop into the conversation to offer you a life vest if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed by not having a website or questioning how strong your current one is or should be. Listen, don't fret about the past. Sandy and I want to help you move forward, and we've pulled together a tool to help you. Our Ready to Build Your Website Preparedness Kit. Yes, it's as formal as it sounds. No, not really. It's a wonderful tool to help you ensure that you have everything prepped and ready as you wave your white flag of surrender and ask for some website help. This tool will save you and your website developer time in the process. Visit empowerprgroup.com/website to download it today. And let's schedule time to chat and see if Sandy and I can help you with your website needs. Alrighty, back to the conversation. Okay, so you figured out your goals and your strategies. You and maybe you've worked with us and we've helped you figure that out. Sadie, I think we need to talk about not the fact that they know that they need a website. Like, you need one. Like, walk away from this whole season knowing like this is a known. It's not a question if you should have a website. Like, you need one. That's just a given. But now we want to pivot on like, what is it that you need to bring the website to life? So there are things that make the website process go smoothly. And with Sandy and I want to help you with that.
Yes, and I'm going to tell you, this is going to help you and the person, no matter who you go to. These same elements are key to getting it done well.
And faster. and with better quality and with better strategy and with better cohesion. And listen, like, take notes. Actually, you can take notes all you want, but we have a free downloadable for y'all that's going to have this information and more. So leisurely listen and enjoy, and know that you can go download our downloadable that's going to give you your kind of preparedness kit, and all this stuff will be included. So you need a website. You know what your target audience is looking for in one, but like, you don't know where to start. You don't know how to begin. You don't know what you need. And listen, in the web designer world, the next step is what Sandy calls assembling your assets. Let's assemble your assets.
We need your assets.
We need your assets. So the first one is your brand, right?
Doesn't have to be fancy, but it needs to be a brand that you're going to carry through websites, social media, anywhere that you put yourself. You need that brand. And a brand is not just your logo and your colors. It is everything. It is the essence of your business, your everything, right? It's the way you speak. It is the way you interact with people. It is everything about it.
It is, and that's why, so those of you all listening, if you're kept tuning in and you haven't listened to all the seasons and episodes thus far, go back to season 2. It's all focused on author branding, and you will get a deep dive into Madeline Copperwaite's big mind of brilliant ideas, and you'll walk away realizing that a brand is so much bigger. But coming to the table when you're building your website with understanding your author brand, not your book brand, your author brand, it is going to create a crazy cohesion where your visuals align with the feelings and emotions and experiences you want your people to have. So articulating that is really pivotal. So it does, even though we say it's not your logo, your brand does include your logo.
Yes, it does. And it is necessary for the website. Yeah. And your font is necessary for the website. And that color palette is key to making it look beautiful.
It is. Don't stress. So we mentioned Mike Barger's website earlier. He's a really great example. His brand is bigger than him, but his logo and his brand name is him, Mike Barger. The logo is his name. But you will quickly realize that his brand is so much bigger and has so much depth. So I want you to kind of take that and let that sink in, and realize that you want your website to have the same feeling as the rest of your brand assets do, whether that is your marketing materials, your social sites, whatever. This should be the hub of it, and everything else stems from it.
Yes. And assets include your book stack. It includes, really need those book stacks.
And I would say your book can have its own identity, but it does pair nicely when it feels, and I'm going to take a page from Madeline's, one of the episodes I did with Madeline, when she said your brand colors should be sisters, not cousins, meaning you can have some variation, but they should have a similar kind of vibe. I think with your book, and you kind of, if you're building your brand after your book has come out, I think that there is a way that your author brand feels like a sister to your book and not distant cousins, where it can have a connection, but it doesn't have everything. And if you were to visit stephaniefeger.com, like Sandy, I feel like I found that with my Color Today Pretty book and my Stephanie Feger brand, my author brand, as an example.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be related. I'm going to say it's very difficult to create a brand and have your book be completely different. It's possible, and I've done it a few times, but it is much more difficult.
So Sandy, we've learned in episode 1, is a woman that can wear many hats. And Sandy, not that I don't think you can create a brand if you need to, but we should not be going to a website developer and saying, I don't have anything, figure it out for me. Please no. You need to have given this thought, worked with a graphic designer or whatever, figure it out. This needs to be figured out because it sets the tone for how your website's going to speak to people. And here's another thing too, you might know kind of your your visual look, but you don't really know the kind of tone you want your website to look, you could do some competitive analysis and evaluate what others in the space are doing and how is their brand speaking. That might give you ideas for how your brand could speak. I think about this author. She was phenomenal. She was on at the end of the season 2 as a bonus episode with when we were talking about author brand, Stacy Sassine, and her brand, her business, Epic Reboot. You know, that's a prime example. When we were building out our website, Sandy, you and I and Stacy were looking at other websites that were in the healing space and using that as a way to help kind of inform all of this process.
Yes. And honestly, even though Stacy came with, she had a logo, she had a color palette, she had her book, she had everything. And I was still asking throughout the build, is this the feel? Because, you know, all of those pieces give you that feel. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to make sure that I was nailing it for her.
You did, girl.
And it is another beautiful site.
I love it.
So, and that, you know, she was built fairly quickly with the logos, and she had her font, and she had her color palette, and she had everything she needed, and then some.
Do you know what else she had in her asset toolkit was her photography? You know, Sandy, when you and I start working on a website, we always start with, okay, do they have their brand? And then the next question is, what are their photos look like?
And if you are an author and you are thinking about speaking, especially if you're thinking about speaking, you need professional images of you. There are a lot of businesses that can have websites built using stock photos.
Yeah.
Authors really need to have photography.
Amen. Preach it. And let me tell you, you are kind of the queen of finding some awesome stock photography when needed.
Yes, absolutely.
But I do think that what sets apart a really strong author website is the author photos. And I also think, and this is kind of Sandy, our secret sauce that we love, is not just always photos where you're cropped in the middle and it's tight headshots. No. I'm a big fan of lifestyle photos, off-centered photos, and detail shots. I love photos where, like, I know that's me, you know that's me. You might, the visitor may not fully know it's me, but that's okay. Like, it's a part of the brand identity, and it's very interconnecting. So, like at stephaniefeger.com, I have a couple of photos of me journaling or me typing on the computer or stocks with books of authors that I've worked with. I love those.
Yes, and those websites always come out with so much more feeling and meaning than stock photography that isn't you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And don't worry, y'all. There's a whole nother season coming on photography. This is a big one that we want to talk about. For now, if you are like, oh my gosh, I have a website I need to do tomorrow and I didn't realize I needed photos, a couple things I want to just share. First and foremost, make sure that these author photos you do, that it's in alignment with your brand look, feel, and vibe. Are you a conversational person? Then your photos should feel conversational. Do you use bright colors? Maybe your clothing needs to be bright. Are you in an academic setting? Maybe your photos should have some academic positioning. Are you a forward thinker? Then maybe your photos should position you that way. Do you do historical nonfiction or whatever? Then maybe it needs, all of that is important because the photos tell the story.
And it doesn't have to be hundreds of photos. I have worked with hundreds of photos and I have worked with 10 photos. It just, you need some really good, and Stephanie is accurate, you need to find a photographer who understands the difference between headshots and website photo.
Right. It's like, give me negative space. There are photographers who are phenomenal, but they have no idea how to do website. And I can tell you, you know, if you are an author and you're like, I don't live in Kentucky, Stephanie, where you are and where your photographer is and what have you, that is okay. I've done photo direction for people in all parts of the U.S. to make sure that we get photos that Sandy and I can work with on the website.
So I will say that, one, I have driven 8 hours to Kentucky for a photo shoot. And you need to also make sure that photographer is willing to communicate, because they are then part of your team. You know, you're building a team. And they need to be a part of that team, talking to your designer and your marketing coach and just all of the people who are going to be involved in the project.
So, okay, so you need your brand, you need your photos, and then like number 3 is what gives you, and I like nervous ticks. What is it, Sandy? Drum roll. What is it?
Content. Have to have your words. I can't even begin to design if I don't have copy. I can do a lot of things, but I can't lay out a design. I've tried. I had a client who changed the copy after the design. That changes everything. It doesn't have to be thousands and thousands of words. I actually prefer it not be pages. People are not going to read, a 6-page bio. They're only going to read short blocks.
I mean, you only really get a couple of seconds of somebody's time when they're on your website before they make an opinion of you and a judgment of you. So use that couple of seconds to have short, succinct, packing a punch type content. But going back to like how the content dictates design, if you start out with a story, we might want to design the website where that section looks like it's written on a paper or looks like a story. Or if you've got really strong quotes, we want to pull that out. Or if you have your content lends itself to icons to make movement, like all of that dictates design. And you can't just pull it out of anywhere. You need that content. And Sadie, you don't just need content. If you really want your website process to go beautifully, you want finalized content that you're not going to change after the website's design, because that could create a elongated web development experience.
Yeah, and your content has to have it needs to tell people your mission, what you're trying to do, but it also needs to be able to drive traffic, right? And so there is some SEO in there. It has to be written powerfully because you only have a few seconds, and it needs to have a little bit of SEO value.
So we're talking to authors who are like, well, of course you need copy, of course you need content, but let me tell you that the person coming to your website isn't looking to read your book right now. So the type of writing is different.
You have a few seconds to really have somebody understand what you do and why they're there in the first place. So it has to tell them that within, a second or two.
Absolutely. Well, not just a second. So the research that I did, Sandy, it says it takes 50 milliseconds. That's half a second for users to form an opinion about your website that determines whether they like it or not and whether they'll stay or they will leave. That's crazy.
It is, and that half a second is going to combine all of those 3 things we just talked about. It's going to combine your assets, your photography, and your copy. So, half a second. So literally as soon as that website loads, and it should load fast, all of those pieces are right there front and center. If it's not a professional look, they're just going to leave.
If I'm being honest, I do. So, okay. And the other thing just about content too is it's like photography. You want to find a photographer that knows how to take photos for website. Same thing for content. Even if you're an author, you are a beautiful wordsmith, you can write your own content. I'm not saying you always need to invest in this, but if you do invest in writing or getting content help, make sure it's website content help. That is very different.
Yeah, someone who actually understands how to write for websites.
All right, so Sandy, we've talked about the 3 big things that are in like your preparedness kit. So before you even start, that's where you go. People know that they need a website, they know what assets they need. But I think the next thing that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about is what are the different elements on the website that authors should have? And I think you and I have organically figured this out from the oodles of author websites we've done. And it's pretty straightforward. Some of them are a little innovative and helpful, so we'll talk about that. But yeah, if we kind of think about it in blocks because most websites are built in blocks.
Yes, you are guiding people through with your words.
Yes.
And so it's kind of written in that block to help people navigate.
So, so these are different quote unquote blocks that we think you need to consider, kind of important sections. Really, the strategy on why you're creating this website is going to dictate its order. So don't get hung up on the order of what we're talking about. Your strategy will dictate that. However, I say that, I think your first thing needs to be some sort of an opening or positioning block, something that explains why in the world does this matter, and you really need to connect it to your visitors.
And it has to be succinct because it's down to that half a second. It has to be super succinct why they're there.
Usually your homepage is the place for that because that's the first place that they land. And you want people to know like they're in the right place, your message is going to serve them, and here's my hook. And I don't mean hook in a sleazy marketing way. I mean hook as in you're gonna do something to better their lives, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's another block, Sandy, that you think that we need to make sure we have?
Well, we've already talked about the opt-in block, and I know that for years, above the fold is the term that I absolutely hate because we as humans scroll. I just don't believe in that above the fold. So. An opt-in, if you are trying to build an email list and you are trying to create some kind of funnel or process for people, then you need to have an opt-in block.
I agree. And I think what that opt-in is requires deeper discussion. I don't think a website should not have an opt-in. Sometimes that can be included in your footer if you don't have like a strong opt-in, a strong lead magnet, but you definitely need something. I also think you need your author bio, and that does not mean it has to be a 5-page thing. It can be a short paragraph, but a little bit about you. People care. People want to know why am I going to read her particular book, especially nonfiction? Why do I care about this marketer? What makes her different than others? I think that bio is a credibility piece.
I think it is. It really tells people your qualifications to tell them anything.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about this in blocks, but for some authors, there's a whole different page that they do just on the about.
Yeah, I was thinking that when you said that. A lot of times it is a small paragraph. However, if you're not doing a brochure site, then a lot of times you'll link through and you will have a whole page that then tells them you understand their solution, their problem.
Yeah.
You have the solution, and this is why I have the solution.
Yeah.
This is how I got to that place.
Yeah, you can share your credentials in a non-resume way, but that is going to help validate why people want to work with you or want to purchase your book or why they trust the messages that you share. Okay, what's another one on your end? What's another one you think of?
Well, I think most authors, and maybe they don't, but a speaking or a services, right? So you are offering something outside of the book. That could be being hired to speak. It could be services that you offer, coaching or workshops, one-on-one.
So I do think most authors need a how to work with me section. This is just really important because most people are going to be going to your website because, especially for the nonfiction authors, because they're like, oh, I love what this was all about. What's next? And I feel like that section can do it. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've read the book. They love what you had to say. They are, at that point, primed to know how to work with you further or what you can help them with down the road.
Exactly. And then you said something around the speaking side, so I want to go to this other idea. I feel like this is our kind of innovative idea, Sandy. Not every author is doing this, but the good ones are. And the ones that want to speak are. And we kind of call this like a speaking resource page. So usually this is separate from, this is not typically on brochure sites, but if you are wanting to do speaking, think like your meeting planners that you're going to be positioning yourself to, and have a place where they can download your bio, get info about your book, get a headshot, get a book stack, your introduction, make it easy for them. And a speaking resource page would do that.
I do love speaking resource pages.
I do too. I kind of think it's the new thing that everybody's doing. Well, no, let me backtrack. Not everybody's doing. The new thing the good speaking authors are doing. Just, it goes back to thinking like your reader, but also thinking like those who are going to be hiring you. Like, how can you make it easier for them?
Yeah, I mean, every website I do is built on user experience. And it is, how do you make it as easy as possible for your users to get what they need to make that decision?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. What's another one, Sandy? Another
Well, obviously,
blog.
your book section.
Obviously. And for some people, it's its own page, but it doesn't have to be. Could be a section on your website. But I mean, of course, you want to talk about your book or books. And through the lens of, again, what is someone going to learn from? Okay, another idea. Ooh, I think this is a good one that goes with it. Do you have any like collateral materials or resources or downloadables if they relate to your book or your business? Your website would be a good place for that. So throughout your book, you might mention something regularly. Well, I'll put it on your website so that people can download it and mention it in your book, because then you can draw people to your website.
And another idea here. Testimonials. Whether they come from Amazon or client work, testimonials. Have to have some testimonials.
I mean, and again, if you're an author or an entrepreneur, you might want testimonials too about how you've lifted and shifted the message off the page and into your practice or into consulting or whatever.
Whatever section you're talking about at the time, each section could have testimonials from different people based on different experiences with you.
Okay, another idea I have is you need like some sort of potential media section, like a featured on section. If you've done things, this isn't critical, but if you have, your website can be a placeholder for some of that.
Sure. If you write articles for other publications, if you are guests on podcasts, use every bit of, we talked about season 1 about people who are hesitant to market. Those are opportunities for you to showcase what you do and what you know without marketing, so to speak.
Yes.
You can still share those podcasts, put them on your website, write a blog post about them. There are a lot of ways to share those, whether it's a media page, writing about them.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like I keep talking about my stephaniefeger.com website, but I'm kind of in love with it. But I love how you put a scrolling featured on section. It is so cool, Sandy.
You had a significant number of podcasts that you were, or shows, radio appearances, something that allowed for that. But it adds credibility to who you are and what you're providing.
I agree. You just said something too I think we need to share as another block is blogs. Blogs can be called different things. We have some authors who they're called articles or insights, but the concept is the same. It's this thought leadership content sharing, and that is really good for people who want like an engaging site, a site that's kind of dynamic. You can incorporate video in that portion, but I think, considering a blog section is kind of important. What's another one, Sandy? I think I've got 3 more on my list.
Oh, let me see. I don't have my list. So I'm thinking.
How can I contact you?
Yes.
The contact. There's lots of ways at the contact.
How? That you have to really think about how you want people to connect with you.
It's a big one. I mean, do you want people to call your cell phone?
Right. Or email you or fill out a form. And if you want them to connect with you on social media, please, my personal preference, that you do not put that first at the header. It to me it takes away from. I heard somebody call them little candy coated exits to your website.
Oh, I like that. It's true. You don't want to direct people away from your website. They likely won't come back. Yeah, thinking through how you want to communicate with people is really important. There's some, contact forms you could use, or directing them to an email. Those are probably the smartest ones. If phone is the way that people typically, like your target market works with, you might want to look at a service where it's not your personal cell phone that's out there, just so that information's not put out there. But you said something about social. So like the last 2 that I have down, Sandy, I'm going to package them together. One of them social, your whatever your social handles are, you'll want to make sure. Let me backtrack. Not all your social handles, the ones you're active on that are relevant to your target market.
Yes.
I don't have my Facebook on my business one. Not my personal Facebook, but maybe my business Facebook page. And the other one, oh, go ahead.
Is my pet peeve? Is it my pet peeve is your footer.
I was going to say, that's the last one, your footer.
It is the one space that almost all DIY forgets about their footer. It is great real estate.
Yes, it is.
It is. There's so many ways you can use your footer.
Sandy makes really pretty footers. I love every footer. It's almost like it's your secret sauce.
It's a whole separate little website down there. It is a great place for navigation and direction and opt-ins. And please update your copyright year, or don't include it at all.
But don't put it.
Just don't put a year if you're not going to update it. Because when I get to a website that says copyright 2018, I will probably have second thoughts.
Your footer is almost like the bow on top of the wrapped present, right? Like your present's there, you've got everything, the contents are within, but that bow is like just this beautiful finished piece. And then they also know that they've made it to the end of that site. Like it's not a cliffhanger. You're giving them what they need and you're
and
wrapping
if
it
they make it to the end of your site, they deserve a fabulous footer.
Amen.
You know, if they actually scroll down there, they deserve the best footer you can give them.
I agree. And I mean, if we're going to talk about Mike again, his is probably one of the most beautiful footers on the planet.
I really do love Mike's site.
I do too.
And I'm fortunate that I can maintain Mike's site, so I know that it's not going to get messed up in the future.
Yes, we'll talk all about maintaining and hosting and domains and maintenance and all that stuff in future episodes. So, Sandy, when I was thinking about this episode, I found a really interesting article on HubSpot, which is where a lot of people go to get some like website related stats. And here's a few things I just want to leave people with. We've talked about some of these. One of them is the first 5 seconds of a page load time has the highest impact on conversion rates. And you're shaking your head because the reality is that like conversion rates drop by an average of 4.42% with each additional second of load time.
I spend a lot of time on speed because it is that important.
What are some things that could cause the website to go slow?
Well, huge images. You know, I optimize images before I put them in. Big images slow it down. There are themes and plugins that slow down sites. There are a lot of bad hosting can slow down a site. There are a lot of factors. So it's important, and it's important to continue to test it.
Agreed. Another one of Sandy's superpowers. All right, here's another stat I found I thought was interesting. The average American has access to more than 10 connected devices in their household. I bring that up because you can have a beautiful website on your desktop, but if it's not mobile optimized, oh my gosh, you're missing stuff.
There may be sections on your desktop site that you don't include in your mobile site. It just depends on your strategy. Let me just throw that in there one more time.
Okay, this stat, 60% of smartphone users have contacted a business directly using the search results. For instance, click to call option. I think that's also important because when you're thinking of the calls to actions that you have on your website, like people are going to do something, and when they're on their smartphone, like they don't have time to go, oh, I'm going to look at 1,000 things. If there's a quick, oh, I could just click this real quick and do it. That's a case, Sandy, in my opinion, for having a contact form versus just an email, because
all of these sections, you know, we are talking about a lot of sections. However, that page should only have one goal, right? You can have all of these pieces, but if your goal is to have somebody contact you, then you don't want to keep pushing them someplace else in a different direction. You want to make sure that those calls to action lead to calling you or emailing you or contacting you.
Make it easy for them. Make it easy. All right, the last two stats go together. It says blogs are the primary 3 forms of media used in content strategies today, and 89% of content marketers used blogs in their content strategy in 2020. So blogs aren't going away. They are prime real estate for thought leadership and dot connections. And you can use the blog platform, in my opinion, Sandy, for integrating media, for YouTube, integrating your video and YouTube, for podcast integration, all that stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say, do not think that a blog is simply writing stories or writing. A blog, it is, I mean, there is a lot. I think I mentioned earlier, adding if you're a guest on a podcast, write a blog about it. It doesn't have to be long. It can be a very short blog. But write that blog, include it, get the, transcription, make sure because you're, yes, writing for your readers, but you're also writing for Google and fresh content. Yes. So, yes, absolutely.
We have talked about so many great things, and I hope that our listeners are walking away going, oh, well, yeah. Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe they're taking notes while in their car listening, or, hey, don't forget, we have a free downloadable that's got all this stuff in there to help you out too. Sandy, it's been real and fun, and I've enjoyed this episode like I enjoyed the one before. Episode 3, we are diving into the different types of websites authors might need to consider, and the types of websites you and I tend to create. So I think that also will help them in kind of that discussion, both internally and figuring out what a website can do for them, but then when they determine who they want to work with, or if they want to try to do a DIY on creating their own website. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. Thanks for being on.
Awesome. Thank you.
As with most anything, when you start with your strategy first, the rest will make sense. As you begin to either build your author or authorpreneur website, start first with the why. The how comes second. Understanding the goal of your website and how it connects with your strategies will ensure that it not only meets your needs, but meets the needs of those you want to engage with you. Also, Sandy and I have had the pleasure of working closely with several authors who are building websites or revamping theirs. And we've learned what makes the process run smooth and also what makes it rocky. The key answer to this is having your assets in place and trusting the experts. The downloadable that is linked to in the show notes will provide you with that asset checklist, and trusting the experts, well, that speaks for itself. If you work with an expert to help build your website, they will likely be considering things like mobile optimization, the user experience, SEO, or search engine optimization, and the strategy behind building the website you need. As with most successful efforts, teamwork makes the dream work. Yes, my daughter reminds me of that daily, and the same holds true for website development. Have you been thinking that a website is something you need, or that you'd love for someone to take a peek at yours and see how you could improve upon it? Well, one of the first things that we work on with authors at the Empower PR Group is building upon their digital presence. Author friend, hear me when I say that you need this. Whether or not you would like myself or our team to help you, we want you to feel prepared when you go to bring your website to life. So we've created a tool for you. Consider it your website prep kit. The Ready to Build Your Website Preparedness Kit will provide you with insights on everything you need to make your website development experience easy peasy and run smoothly. And if our team can help with that experience, we'd love to. Visit empowerprgroup.com/website or see the link in the show notes to download that tool and learn more about how we can help you with your author branding digital presence. Remember, empowered people empower people. I've empowered you. Now, with your website in place, it is your turn to empower others.